This is not something that is just in the movies. You know, this is not something that is just in the news. This is something that happens. And you know, when I was at the university level, I lost one of my students to the struggle. It was devastating. I wear his name on my arm every day.
Welcome to the Governor's Institute podcast for military service members, veterans, and their families. This podcast is designed to help connect those who served and their families with the services and benefits they've earned. Listen to thoughtful conversations that offer insights and everyday tools to get the most out of your service, wherever you are in your career. Follow this show wherever you get your podcasts and stay connected at governorsinstitute.org or follow us on social media at GOVINST. Now let's get to the show.
Hello and welcome to the NC Strive podcast, where we focus on empowering military members, veterans, and their families in their journey through higher education and beyond. NC Strive is a diverse consortium composed of 2- and 4-year public and private schools, federal and state agencies, teachers, administrators, staff, advocates. Since 2015, we've been working to increase awareness and knowledge about the unique challenges that veterans and their families face as they transition from military life into an academic setting. That's the goal of this podcast series. With veterans as our focus, we're covering a spread of topics from student life to resources on campus, academic accommodations, mental health, budgeting, much more, all with the goal of getting good, actionable intelligence, boots on the ground know-how out there for both military students and for the people whose job it is to help them succeed in their educational journey. I'm your host, Jon Camp. In this episode, we want to help student veterans understand how to get the most out of the resources offered to them at the educational institution at which they are studying. This is a News You Can Use episode, and we've got 2 great guides for this. Brad Wren, Program Manager for Military and Veterans Education at the UNC system, and Siobhan Norris, Division Director for Wake County Veteran Services. Welcome, both of you, and thank you for being here. We need you. I need you for this conversation. But before we start giving away the store with great tips and tools, why don't you tell us a bit about yourselves, where you started military-wise, and how the work that you're doing today gives you insight into the question of campus resources. Siobhan, can you take us there?
Absolutely. So I come from a military family. My dad is a combat wounded Vietnam veteran, and we can actually trace our military history all the way back to the Civil War. And so I am the second woman in my family to have served, and I joined the military in 2000 as a military police soldier. And I got out in 2004, was stationed in South Korea for 2 years, and then Fort McPherson for another 2 years, which is now owned and operated by Tyler Perry.
That's awesome.
due to the base realignment and closures. And I've just had a passion for serving our military communities, whether that's veterans, transitioning service members getting out, military spouses, children who, have moved 17 times in their life, going base to base. And the work that I do now as the division director for Wake County is I lead 2 dynamic teams, one focusing on county veteran service officers who help veterans get their benefits that they've earned through the service, whether that's disability and compensation, things like that. And then another team that focuses on ending veteran homelessness here in Wake County. Wake County has over 55,000 identified veterans, so we have the largest amount of veterans in any other county in North Carolina.
Surprising, really.
Right. You would think maybe closer to
Cumberland
Jacksonville
or
or Cumberland County, right? But no, and there's a lot of reasons why veterans choose Wake County as their home. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to work. You got great schools. But me as the division director, I work to devise a strategy for everyone from our elected officials down to our department leaders to other folks in different departments in different areas, and focusing on the social determinants of health and working solely to create a broader impact so that we're taking better care of our veterans here that live here.
Awesome. Well, you're going to be a great person to help us through this conversation. Brad, you were in the Air National Guard here in North Carolina 6 years. In the civilian world, if I've got this right, you and Siobhan shared a job, or you shared her job.
We did. Siobhan is the Obi-Wan to my Anakin.
I love it. That's fabulous. Well, you can talk about that if it makes sense to, but now you're the program manager for Military and Veterans Education UNC system. Why don't you just unpack a little of this for us?
Yeah. So I too come from a military family. I did 6 years in the Air Force and Air National Guard. And I was a meteorologist, so I never worked for the Air Force. I always worked for the Army. So I got a lot of love from my folks at Fort Liberty. And so I've been working in higher ed in some capacity with military-affiliated students, military and military-affiliated students, for about 15 years. I started out as at the campus level, working on a grant program to get accelerated course credit for medics and corpsmen through nursing programs. Ended up becoming the director of military affiliated services at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and did that for the longest stint of my academic career. And then ended up taking Siobhan's place as at the UNC system office. And for those of you who don't know what that means, it's the sort of governing and policy-making body for all of the public 4-year higher ed institutions in the state. So if you think about anybody who's got UNC or State or Carolina, anything like that in their name, those are probably one of our schools. So yeah, I've been in this role for about going on 3 years now, and our job, my job specifically, is to sort of serve as a liaison between the constituent campuses and the system office, to sort of determine what we do at the system office, how what we do at the system office translates onto the campuses and to the direct effects that it has on the students themselves, and also to coordinate with other agencies like GWG, like Governor's Working Group, and the Governor's Institute, and our partners in the community college system and the NCICU, North Carolina Independent Colleges and University system, to make sure really that there's equity and parity of support and resources throughout the state for anybody who is a military or military-affiliated student. We believe that a student should never choose one school over another because they do more for their military, right? We should all be on par doing the same kind of stuff, providing the same level of support and resources for these students, and allowing them to make the choice as to where they want to go to school based on what school and what major and what program is the best fit for them.
Hear, hear. Well, that's a great place to really start this off. It's great having you both here. We're going to have a great conversation today. Let's start at 30,000 feet. And Siobhan, I'll start with you. When it comes to services that are available to student veterans on campus or off campus, what should people know to really get the most out of their student experience? So through a student's lens specifically, what are some of the more important services, maybe the flagship programs you can point to that students really should know about? Just let's start us out at the top.
I would say first and foremost, get familiar and acquainted with your military affairs office. Find that liaison. I know every UNC institution has a military liaison. And so that would be the first point of contact I would make. I would also look into, disability resources. Before we sat down, I said, I have some hearing loss from being in the military. I need to sit on this side so I can hear you better. And so get familiar with some of the resources from the Disability Resource Center, whether that's tutoring lessons, that certain tools that you can use. I know at UNCW, they had this really cool pen. I can't remember what the name of it was, but it's out of the Resource Center, and it was for hearing impaired students. So it would record the lecture, and then you can transcribe it afterwards. It was incredible. And then so they leverage the technology that the universities can provide to help you in your learning so that you don't let your disability get in the way of your learning. Be familiar with the policies, I guess, and the processes for getting your tuition paid if you are using your GI Bill. I know you have to show your certificate of eligibility, get that approved by your school certifying official. So become familiar with them. If the college or university requires you to show your class schedule, make sure you submit that on time, just so you can make sure that your tuition is getting paid, so that you don't have that's one less thing to worry about, right? And I can't speak more highly enough than for any student veteran organization. Getting involved is I think the key to success for any military connected student. And most, if not all, of the student veteran organizations on campus are very inclusive of the military spouses and dependents as well. And so even giving officer type positions to military spouses and dependents, because they value the skills that they bring to the campus as well. So it's not just about the veteran. It could be a military spouse or a child that's using a GI Bill. I think getting involved in the organizations on campus will really help any veteran student veteran to get the most out of their education, because the worst thing that you can do is just drive to campus, do your classes, and drive back home. I think that really impacts the social enrichment portion that is so important for students' retention and their mental well-being.
All really good thoughts. Brad, same question for you. From your perch at UNC, some of the more important services and programs available to student veterans.
Yeah, Siobhan, per usual, hit the nail right on the head. First and foremost, make friends with your school certifying official. Find out who that person is. As soon as you get the acceptance letter, find out who the school certifying official is and contact that person. They may or may not be part of the military affiliated or military services office. Hint, hint, that is a good model, though, that person should be a part of that office. So there's sort of a one-stop shop for all of the military student needs. But yeah, getting started with that process of initiating your GI Bill or TA benefits and getting that rolling before tuition is due and classes are starting and that sort of thing is number one. And again, reach out to your military services offices and really just, get engaged in whatever you can. Civic engagement, leadership and civic engagement offices, intercultural affairs, all of these programs that schools offer. If I could give a piece of advice to any person who's coming out of the military and going into an institution of higher learning, unpack that transactional nature of the education relationship, right? It is not just, here's my tuition, give me my degree, right? College is a magical place. It is a place where the world changes and things happen on a very big scale on college campuses, and you can be a part of that, and you can help shape what that looks like. And how important is it to do that instead of just marking time, getting your degree, and moving on? It's a unique time in your life, and if you don't leverage that, if you don't use that to its full potential, then you really are missing out on a tremendous amount of things that could be very beneficial and very positively impactful to your life.
Yeah, and you both mentioned groups. Let's think on Student Veterans of America for just a minute. I know both of you have had a lot of experience with that organization. Brad, on UNC campuses, how many of your 17 schools have SVA on campus?
Actively, I think we have 12 chapters within the system right now.
I got to think that you will think that this is something that should be applied on every campus. Is that so? How do we move in that direction? Yeah,
it's one of the challenges that we have, and I'm sure that the folks at SVA know this and are tracking this, is that just due to the nature of it being a student group, right? Your administrations, the folks who are driving the boat, right? Your president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, like those four folks, they're transitional because they're students. And so at best, you're going to have those people in for a couple of years, right? And there's not as much consistency and continuum from cohort to cohort with regards to folks who want to get involved in those programs. And so you'll have a couple of years where your SVA chapter is rocking and rolling and you're doing great things, fundraising and making stuff happen. And then, the next group of folks, they don't really want to do a whole lot, right? And so maintaining that consistency, and that's where I see us coming in at the system level, right? Is because we have, one of our bosses, Andrew Kelly, who's over the strategy and policy team, said, well, one of the things that we do at the system office, and it really resonated with me, is we have the power to convene, right? And so, I would love to see us, and we've started doing this this past year, and we're going to continue to do this, to sort of bring together all of our constituent campus administrators and have a regular meeting to serve as kind of an anchor point for those folks. So as that new president is coming in, as that new VP is coming in, and they ask their predecessors, what do I do? Like, how do I do this stuff? They can say, okay, well, here's a Zoom meeting. You need to go to this Zoom meeting, and you're going to meet all the other people who are in SVA chapter administrations throughout the state, and they will tell you what you need to do.
Siobhan, I wonder, one of the reasons I asked Brad about SVA is because it's obvious. It's right there. It's low-hanging fruit. Are there ways, you mentioned getting involved and that the importance of finding that community? Are there places that students can go outside of a group like SVA that's just so obvious? What's your sense of finding that community? And take it where you will.
Yeah. So when I was helping with the military affairs team at UNC Wilmington, we were very engaged with our community partners, like Team Red, White, and Blue, Team RWB. But we worked very closely with community partners, nonprofits, our VFWs and American Legions. There's so many organizations out there that want to support military and veterans, not just for student life, but just for veterans themselves, that I think it's really important to get out there in your community. And I remember at the Wilmington chapter's Student Veterans Association, they partnered with our advancement team to do a fundraiser, and then they used those funds to go out and fix homes of veterans that were falling apart.
Outstanding.
Right. And so as a veteran, I don't think we ever stop serving in some capacity. And so getting involved with those community partners is really important. And then it spreads awareness into your community about the value of student veterans and why they should invest in the student veteran organizations.
Great answer. Let's move from that kind of cultural side of it to the academic side of it and talk about academic resources specifically, whether it's tutoring services, writing centers, what have you. And I want to spend a minute on this. Let's talk about what's out there, what's popular, what should be out there, what we should see more of. Brad, you want to take us away here?
Yeah, so in terms of academics, one of the things that we have done and we have identified over the past several years as a critical need is translating military training and experience into course credit. I can't even tell you. I mentioned earlier on that I got my start in a grant program to get accelerated nursing school plans of study for folks who were medics and corpsmen. I remember very distinctly there was an 18 Delta medical sergeant. So I mean, this guy was high speed, low drag. I mean, he was like a special forces medical sergeant. Putting bullets into people and pulling bullets out of people at the same time, right? And he had to take a basic patient assessment class where he was having to learn how to take a blood pressure and to do a head to toe assessment. And just just how asinine that fact was really the impetus behind this much larger scale project that we've initiated at the system office to take what the fine folks at the American Council on Education have done in codifying what a military service member's training and experience should look like in terms of course credit recommendations, and actually tying those to specific course codes in student information systems on our campuses and automating as much of it as we can. Yeah. And that's a program that we just rolled out. So right now, if you just keyword search, whatever search engine you use, UNC system military credit, you'll be taken to a page where you can input all of those ACE IDs on your joint services transcript, and you can get a readout of all of the courses that every school within the UNC system is going to offer you in terms of your military training and experience. And so one of the things that I want us to do, and that we're going to do, is to build out the existing database. Right now, we're over 9,000 equivalencies in the system. We are not stopping there. This is going to be an ongoing project, and we are going to be continually building that database. And the beauty of it is, per policy, and just the logistics of the way that the system works, once a person comes in with an ACE ID and gets that equivalency matched, it exists. So that 18 Delta, as soon as an 18 Delta comes in, if you've got an MOS code 18 Delta and a school gives you X, Y, and Z credits, right? Every person coming in with an 18 Delta MOS code after that doesn't even have to submit anything. It just automatically articulates onto their plan of study in a very similar way to the way that community college courses just automatically transfer in.
That's true.
And so building that database out and making as many of those equivalencies as we can, I see is goal number one in terms of academic support for these students.
It's just going to be wonderful when it gets under fully implemented. That is just going to be a fabulous tool. Where are they on the implementation of that? How many years before that the automation that you're talking about is fully up and running at all state schools?
It's live now.
It's live.
We launched
at every
it
school
live
in the system.
At every school within the UNC system right now is searchable. And so what we're doing now is we're looking at, as new jobs come in and new soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and guardians come in with jobs that have not been codified in our system and not been put into the system yet, we're going to put those courses and those equivalencies into the system so that they can be automated. And over time, this is going to build on itself, and it will just become something that is just automatically done as a student submits their joint services transcript, just like they would submit any other transcript from any other school. And so, it's happening and it's live now. And but there is no end date. I want to be really clear about that. This is not like so we've met the letter of the law, we've met the spirit of the law. Now we're done. We don't have to do it. This is something that is going to be an ongoing initiative that will never stop. We'll never stop adding courses. We'll never stop building out that database, and we're going to keep doing it as long as we're breathing.
And when you explain again, and then we can move on, but explain again how a student makes sure that they're getting all that they can, that they're entered into that system.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons that we chose the tool, and without doing a demo of the tool and getting too far into the weeds, basically what you can do is you can search every school in the system, right? So if you're going to, and I'm just throwing these names out there, if you're going to say UNC Chapel Hill, and you put in your military ACE codes, your Joint Services Transcript information, and you don't see any equivalencies for UNC Chapel Hill, but you do see some for NC State, right? One of the functions of that tool is you can get a printout on UNC System Office letterhead that spells out what this credit articulation looks like on all of these campuses. So you could go to the credit articulation office on your campus and say, hey, I would like to have this course analyzed for or evaluated for a military equivalency, because there are 6 other schools in the system that are offering this course for this training and experience. So could we look at that, for our campus?
As awesome as this and powerful as this tool is, it still sounds like, for the time being anyway, it relies on the Veterans Initiative. Is there a way to automatically, or is that in the works to automatically just upload that the minute? Is there a way to do that automatically?
Yeah. So there is a certain element. There's always going to be a certain element of the student driving the process, because like I said, they're coming in with jobs that are not translated yet. They're not articulated yet. But we're not resting on our laurels either. We are currently engaged in convening additional faculty panels to match equivalencies every semester. The goal is to do 1 academic unit per semester, and we're focusing on the highest demand majors and jobs that separating service members over the next 5 years are going to have. So we're looking right now at nursing is number 1. And then you've got other stuff, your STEM courses, supply chain, logistics, leadership. All of these courses are going to be sort of in the wings waiting to be articulated. So as the students are doing this every year and they're having those courses evaluated, we are intentionally and overtly at the faculty level building out those equivalencies as well.
So it's not a panacea, but Siobhan, to your ear, this must be just a panacea. This must just be wonderful to what you know as necessarily kind of the student veteran experience to what we're hearing from Brad.
Yeah, I want to just really give a shout out to the UNC system for doing this, because I remember this was the conversation that we were having when I was there, I think 3 years ago. When I started in 2018. Gosh, where does the time go? And we were talking about this because there is a mandate, there is a state law that requires us to do this. And, there really wasn't any funding for it. And so, I mean, this takes so much manpower. I really want to stress how much human capital and intelligence that has gone into this. And it's a big lift. Thousands of courses, thousands of military occupational specialties, and then taking that and making sure it matches according to what that service member did in the military and how it relates to their academic success. And so I just kudos to the UNC system. I know it's taken a long time, but you got to do it right. So you got to take your time and make sure you do it right. So it's brilliant. I'm really excited to hear now that it's finally launched.
I want to talk a minute about mental health and mental health support and the programs and services that are out there and best practices. And I want to talk about that because it's important. Sure. And so, Brad, you want to kick us off? I want to get both of you in on this. So, Brad, you want to take it away?
Absolutely. It's a huge deal, and there are some specific things that are different for military populations than for civilian populations in terms of mental health and mental health needs. One of them being because of OIF and OEF, we have this glut of people who are coming in who have this shared traumatic experience that they went through, right? And so there are some things that we can do at our campuses to help with this, and two things in particular that I think we can do is we can educate our staff who work with military students on mental health care. There's a course called Mental Health First Aid that we have through the Governor's Working Group. We are able to provide to anybody and everybody who works with military-affiliated students, not only in the UNC system, but at the community college system and at independent colleges and universities as well. So if you work in higher education in North Carolina and you work with military students, you can sign up for mental health first aid training through the Governor's Institute. And I would encourage anybody and everybody who has anything to do with military students or military-affiliated students to get that training. It's first aid training. It's for people who don't have a clinical background in mental health care. It is just like regular, like physical first aid, right? You're stopping the bleeding and starting the breathing. But it is critical for as many folks who work with military students as possible to have that kind of training. And then the second thing is, a lot of our schools, most of our schools have very robust and very solid counseling centers and student health centers. But a lot of those folks are, by no fault of their own, they're just not familiar with the specific needs of military students. And so, one of the things that we offer also at the system level, again, it's free to anybody who wants to sign up for it. UNC System Military Affairs website, you can register for it today, is cultural competency training. It's green zone training for faculty and staff, anybody who wants to learn more about what the military is like, what military culture is like, and what are some of the specific and unique things that these folks encounter as they transition out of the military and into academia. So if we can get our counseling center folks, as great as they are, if we can get as many of them as possible trained on military cultural competency, then those two things together are going to go a long way.
Great points. Siobhan, your sense on this, mental health.
Mental health is absolutely critical. I've worked with military students for almost a decade, And just like anybody, mental health is so important. And when veterans and transitioning service members come into a university campus, it's a huge culture shock, right? I'm gonna just put a plug in here. If you're getting ready to go to college, be prepared. It's going to be a culture shock, and this is why we're telling you to access these resources, because it will help you to be successful. You're going from a very structured environment where you don't really have to, think about a whole lot of stuff. You just do your training, and it comes naturally to you. To now you're in a whole new environment where you have a lot more freedom, and so that can lead to a sense of feeling overwhelmed. So caring for your mental health is absolutely critical. I would say one of the successes that we had at one of the universities that I was at was we leveraged our VA work study students and made sure that they were QPR trained. So question, persuade, refer. So you can identify if somebody is having maybe a crisis, you at least have the language to communicate with them and encourage them to seek that help, right? Don't be afraid to ask for help, because we all have to do it every once in a while. And so leveraging our student leaders to do that, it helps from a peer perspective. And so I would encourage universities to ensure that if they are leveraging their VA work study students and maybe the Military Affairs Center or wherever, make sure that they're trained on that, because there were 2 incidents on my watch at a university where we had students in crisis. Like we had to call get them to the ER because they were significantly in crisis. Because you have to remember, student veterans, they're older, they are more likely to have families, they have other major responsibilities like paying a mortgage or making sure they're caring for their families. A lot of times they're married and have children. They might be commuting a lot. So there's a whole lot of stressors that go into it. And so ensuring that our faculty and staff understand that these are not just adult learners, they are military-connected adult learners, and they're not your typical traditional college student. And so one of the things that I saw that was successful was some professors even actually went so far as to put it on their syllabus. Hey, if you are a military-connected student and you have VA healthcare appointments, that please come talk to me. I want to know, and so I can work with you to ensure that you don't miss that VA appointment, because that can affect your disability compensation. If you miss those appointments, you don't maintain those. And also understanding what that student veteran needs. Like, do you need to sit closer to the door? Do you want to be in the very back? These are important things, and that will support the overall mental health of that student, because they feel understood, they feel seen, and they feel heard.
Well, I love that. And that's actually something I wanted to dive a little deeper into, and that is what institutions can do. And your professor example is perfect. What institutions can do to, I don't know if encourage students to seek help, if encourage is the right word, but make sure that they're doing everything they can to be there when the student is ready, to meet the student right where they are in that regard. Yeah. The professor example is perfect. Is there anything else like that you can think of? And then Brad, I'll flip it over to you as well. Just institutionally, how can they set students up for success in a mental health capacity? I
say it starts at the top with leadership. At the administration level, it's important that they set policies so that faculty and staff can be prepared, get that training, that green zone training, make that mandatory, ensure you have mental health first aid training, ensure that your student peers are QPR trained. I think that is setting that as a mandate just ensures success at the institutional level.
Yeah, Brad, I want to ask you the same question because, again, to Siobhan's professor example, I mean, great, reach out, perfect, do that. But that's not an institutional answer.
Right, yeah, and I think, Siobhan really nailed it, and, making these sorts of things just a part of the onboarding process. As new faculty are hired, as new staff are hired, just make it a part of the, they go through all of the orientation training anyway, just make it a part of that, right? And I'm so glad that you mentioned also, Siobhan, the QPR training, because it is a tremendous training. I'm a QPR gatekeeper instructor myself, and I'm actually literally like 2 days or next Tuesday, I'm going to be doing a QPR gatekeeper training course. this is not something that is just in the movies. This is not something that is just in the news. This is something that happens. And when I was at the university level, I lost one of my students to the struggle. It was devastating. I wear his name on my arm every day. And so this is something that is happening in the real world. We've all heard the 22 a day suicide numbers, which are in and of themselves just staggering. But recent studies from VA have shown that that's actually a lowball number. It's actually higher than that because that number did not take into account things like overdoses that were questionable and things of that nature. So it's an epidemic. It really is a serious thing, and suicide prevention and the mental health of our military affiliated student communities is of the utmost importance. And it should be standardized. It should be a part of every person who wants to work in higher education. It should be a part of what you do in order to be able to do that.
That's a great answer. Wrapping mental health into the totality of services available for student veterans, then maybe kind of putting a bow on this conversation. Are there things that schools can do to better communicate with, to better offer, to have student veterans better hear the words, hear the information of all this totality, this suite of services that are available to them, all of these resources? Again, if they don't know about them, they might as well not be there for that student. How can institutions better communicate to their onboarding students or their existing students the services that maybe they're taking advantage of some of them, but not all of them, so here's the other suite? It can't just be a PDF that gets emailed out. So
right. Step one is for any first-year student who's coming into the schools, there is typically an orientation, a student orientation. There has to be a breakout session or some sort of military and military-affiliated student-specific discussion that happens. So those folks can say, okay, hey, this is a module here or whatever it's called during your orientation that is for a military student and a military-affiliated student. And then there needs to, with regards to what that orientation breakout session looks like, consistency and equity and parity about what we're telling people. Because, some folks, even on staff who are in charge of doing those orientation sessions, they don't know about the specific needs of the student veterans. They don't know what the specific things that the school has that can help these folks, and pulling those two things together. And so I see that as a challenge for us at the system level, and with the community college system and NCICU system, is let's start standardizing what those orientation sessions look like and making sure that we are being intentional about letting our incoming students know about all of the resources that are available to them.
It's almost like the stars in the sky, and then you start connecting those dots, and the constellations appear on the page. It's like you have all those dots out there. You just got to make sure the veterans see that for what it is.
Right.
Your thoughts?
Yeah. I love the idea of having a semester-long orientation, if you will, to here's the campus, here's how you can access the resources, here's how it's like college 101, how to be successful, and who do you need to talk to for certain things. So.
Yeah, and make that a mandatory class.
Yes.
Because folks who are using the GI Bill can only use the GI Bill to pay for mandatory classes. So it cannot be just an elective class that you can take, right? In order for the GI Bill to pay for it, it has to be following a degree plan. It has to be necessary for you to graduate.
Credit bearing.
Credit bearing. And so at the institutional level, we need to make sure that we're making those courses designed as such. And from my friends at VA, let's look at that model of not paying for those courses and see if we can't maybe add some wiggle room for those first-year orientation courses, because they are absolutely beneficial and can truly help to make that transition into academia successful.
Your lips to institutional ears. Thank you, Brad Wren, Siobhan Norris, both of you. Really appreciate your time, tips, wisdom when it comes to leveraging campus resources for military students. Is there anything else we need to talk about before I let you go?
Career Center.
Career centers.
I want to talk about career centers real quick because it's kind of like wrapping up that life cycle of the student veteran, right?
Yeah.
You go to the university, yes, to gain knowledge, to gain wisdom, but let's be real. We're getting a degree so we can be more marketable and competitive in the career field of our choosing, right? So get involved with your career center, do the networking, work on your resume because, no offense, I've seen some terrible resumes coming right out of the military. And I'm not hating on the transition programs, but we really have to civilianize our resumes because a hiring manager is going to be like, I don't know what this means. I don't know what a tech sergeant is in the Air Force. I don't know what this is. And they're going to keep on moving. So work with your career centers. And I know the UNC system career centers are fantastic. They partner with great companies and organizations like Raytheon and Red Hat and all these big companies, right, that pay well. So take advantage of that. That's another resource that you should take advantage of.
Yeah, and I would say institutionally also, just to move that needle a little further, I would love to see more connections between our career services offices and our alumni affairs offices.
Yes.
Right? Because you have military affiliated and military alums who are working currently in the career fields that your current military students are majoring in. So maybe look at like mentorship or internships, mentornships or whatever they call them, right? Connecting these alums who have been in the military and have this shared experience and identity of being a service member with students who are studying in their field. And that not only creates that connection, but it also creates a pathway to that student getting employed in that career. And we've said it before, if we look at the critical career or the critical workforce needs that we have in North Carolina, it tracks exactly with the top majors for folks who are coming out of the military the next 5 years. So, I mean, it's not only good for them, it's just good business practice overall.
Brad, Siobhan, thank you so much. And thank you if you're listening and watching this NC Strive podcast, whether you're a student or administrator or family member, friend. We hope you found it helpful. To learn more about NC Strive, visit strive.ncgwg.org. And if you enjoyed this podcast, you might like the Governor's Institute's Addiction Medicine podcast. Check that out wherever you get your pods. And again, thanks for joining us on the NC Strive podcast.